Good morning. I'd like to start my speech off by saying that language is a very funny thing. There's power in language. That's something we do frequently here, however, and I do reiterate, there's power in language. Later on in my speech, I mentioned a woman in my life. This is a pretty pivotal point in my way of thinking, as she taught me, in that moment, the true meaning of gratitude. She helped me discern between the important and the insignificant. She put life in perspective by simply living with me. Language, just as inclinations, are tied to those who most often influence you. You speak just as they do by virtue of learning how to speak from them. I use my language as a dance with words, a strong familiarity that everything I say resonates with you, and your resonance bounces off of others. My resonance today is in the form of a poem. It's very Braithwaite and meta, but bear with me. The message that you leave here with is up to you, but my hope is that I can relate to you the importance of perspective, deliberate decision-making, being receptive to the wisdom of others and of the experience of others. My poem is as follows. Constant deliberation from thinkers worldwide leads to a question more difficult than I had expected to hear so often in my youth. Who should you be and how do you plan to live? Miserable agony tears from us as the truth and meaning of what we do believe is that we don't. We don't or we won't because we can't imagine as children taking residence in their adult bodies, the strength it takes as one being, and groups of more children living fearfully and more defined by time more suited to their prime vessels come together to figure out how to lead us from our naive, wide-eyed, bright-smiled infancy to a less surprised, much better advised, wild dream mutualized, childhood vandalized selves. I'm talking about maturity. The age of growing up is now. The present is all we can account for as our brains go through sensory overload and works with no vacation days or sick leave to catch our external up with our internal. The notion that to be is to have done and to will do. The choices you make now are important as they reflect who you were a moment ago and who you intend to be sometime later. But why, cried the adult they were fostering, why, cried the child to the adult they were fostering inside? Why am I being held responsible for my own self when that person isn't me later and wasn't me then? Who gets to tell me who I am when they're changing? Who are you to judge me for my actions and get to scold me for my thoughts? In this moment, the less young, the more wise among us rise against us and speak calmly with unchecked rage. Do not forget, you innocent of the past, the mistakes made among those who thought the individual was only responsible for individual things. You live amongst your people, you live amongst those who depend on you to not make the wrong choice when you're crossing the street and taking a test and making a choice colored by the then you, which affects the later them. And colored you are, made whole by the person you are and the person they are. The sun doesn't rise and set upon you. There is no crown of gold or of thorns laid gently upon your privileged head, nor can less be said of the fact that the time for maturity is now. The time for introspection, harsh decision-making, active vigilance, as passive vigilance is an insult to those whose cause you're dedicated to and whose mission statement is as empty as the words you're saying and the cup in their hands. The time has gone, and you're still sitting here looking upon the clock as the shadow of the judgmental hand of eternity ticks away. One more person has suffered at the hands of your indifference. You have suffered at the hands of their incompetence. A strong woman in my life, less woman than scalpel and stitches, more scars than skin, more strength and resilience and determination than those who dared to tear her down and cut her in the streets, changed me. A strong woman changed me and became me. Her words became my words, her tears, my tears, her children, my children, her story, my story. A strong woman became me for no reason less than her intent on being for me, always, on teaching me, always, on serving me, always. A strong woman became me as the words of another resounded in my mind. Your imperfections are made up. You've gotten into your own head. You're better off than you think you are. The time for maturity has long passed. We made our choices years ago as to who we would be, how we'd be, when we'd be, where, why. Why, said the child, now woken up to their own childish ways. Why hadn't you told me this before? You could have stopped me. You could have saved me. You could have helped me. No, says the less young, more wise. The time had to pass. You had to grow up. The time for maturity is now. Thank you.